Paris Roubaix, love it or hate it, every rider walks away from this epic race with stories of luck, good or bad. It's 165 miles of suffering linking the capital city to the industrial north. The soul of this great race has always been the cobbled roads, which crisscross the region. Roads built for farm vehicles, not automobiles, and certainly not bicycles. It's a race of history and of legend, where names like Coppi, Merckx, Moser, and de Vlaming have been written across the stones. This great event as it runs for the 100th time, and an American rolls out as one of the favourites to win. George Hincapie enters the day with added motivation after a week of near misses, including a 4th place at the Tour of Flanders and a 3rd place in the sprint at Gent-Wevelgem. With the support of his US postal teammates, Hincapie will try to accomplish what no other American before him has been able to do: win the Paris Roubaix. And what a feat it would be, as this classic race celebrates a full century of champions for the 100th time in its glorious history. A world-class field is assembled on the cobbles in Compiègne for what is certain to be another Sunday in hell. Live coverage of this 100th Paris-Roubaix up next here on OLN. Yes, it all began in 1896. It took us right through the 20th century, and here we are now in the 21st century. Hello and welcome to the 100th running of Paris-Roubaix. I'm Phil Liggett, joined as ever in commentary by Paul Sherwen. We are set for a great day out. The atmosphere in Compiègne, as it always is for the Queen of the Classics, is electric. Well, as the riders make ready for the start, the big news is that last year's winner, Servais Knaven, had a bizarre crash out training, and although they say he is going to start, he is injured. But of course, the Lion of Flanders, Johan Museeuw, second last year, he's still here and ready to lead the Domo team. Now, what about Johan Museeuw, Paul? He's probably going to be his final Paris-Roubaix. He's a red-hot favourite.
He has to be. He wanted to win the Tour of Flanders. That was the World Championships for him, the most important race on the calendar. He says he will retire at the end of this year. This may be his last Paris-Roubaix. But, you know, he's been retiring since 1996.
It's true. He also says he's now starting his second youth. But, you know, his old team of Mapei might yet come up against him because they are riding superbly well. Andrea Tafi winning the Tour of Flanders a week ago and the winner of this race.
Well, Mapei last year had a disastrous Paris-Roubaix, which is a race which normally shines on them. This year, though, Tafi is in superb form. They've also got a very good Stefano Zanini, who won the 3 days of La Panna, and back that up with a very good young South African Robbie Hunter. They certainly will be in the mix again.
Yes, Hunter for me, a big name to watch out for in this race today. Well, one name, of course, we haven't mentioned. We've done that on purpose, the name of George Hincapie. That's because we want one of his ex-teammates to tell us more about him. Frankie Andreu is now in the middle of the atmosphere and is going to update us on George.
I'm here in what is normally a tranquil, peaceful town square, but as you can see now, this is an animated holding pen for thousands of spectators and riders as they get ready to get funneled out into the gauntlet of Roubaix. This year they'll have to do 50 kilometers of Pave, and I got a chance to speak with George about how this race will go.
Well, I definitely have good condition right now. I've done a lot of hard work this year. And yes, I was definitely disappointed with 4th place at Flanders. There was a lot of what-ifs, and I just wasn't happy. It felt great. And then Wednesday, I didn't win the race, but I was much more happier with the way I rode. I felt like I was very strong in the race, and I attacked at the opportune moments. And I did a big effort on the camel, and there wasn't really anybody that could stay with me on the camel, so I was happy with the way I raced on Wednesday.
The weather last year was extreme. A lot of crashes, a lot of mud. This year it's going to be dry. It hasn't rained here in a month. How do you expect the race is going to go?
Well, I truly believe the dry weather is going to help with my team. My team is going to be a lot better in the dry. They've been super strong this whole week, and I think it's going to make a big difference having some guys with me further along in the race. So even though it's going to be dry, it's still a very hard race either way, and it's going to be windy. So we just need to be really aggressive. We need to race aggressive and just let it all hang out tomorrow.
Many people view cycling as an individual sport, but for George to do well here, he's going to have to rely heavily on his team. and one of those workhorses is Tom Boonen. I had a chance to speak with them about how Paris Roubaix will go.
I feel good on the cobbles, that's not a secret, and I hope to go really good this year. Help George out and maybe bring him to like Carrefour de l'Arbre or something, like 20 Ks to go, and then he has to finish it off.
Hopefully with the help of George's team, and especially Tom Bonen's motivation, George will find the success he's been searching for at the end of the 2002 Paris Roubaix.
Well, thanks, Frankie, and I must say it really would be the icing on the cake if Hincapie rode well today, because US Postal are having a marvellous start to the year 2002. Right, remember, this is also the third round in the World Cup competition. The first round came in Milan-San Remo, Mario Cipollini finally getting his win there after 2 second places. But the man he beat, Fred Rodriguez. And Rodriguez showed us too in the Tour of Flanders he was going to score more points, as indeed did Cipollini, in this race being won by Andrea Tafi. So Fred Rodriguez comes into this race today lying in third place overall. Mario Cipollini has declined the chance, who is the leader of the World Cup, to take part in this event. So the overall situation there is 120 points for Cipollini, 100 for Tafi, Fred Rodriguez lying in third place with 79. And third place by Fred Rodriguez, Paul, that's the best place at this stage of the competition ever held by an American cyclist.
It certainly is a great performance by Freddie Rodriguez, and I reckon with a couple more points today, he'll move even closer to the top.
All right, well, it's time to look at the route now, and this is not for the nervous viewer because there's an awful lot of cobbles again in this year's event.
There are an awful lot of cobblestones in this event, and that's what makes it so famous. Despite over 100 years of progress and development, the route of Paris-Roubaix is not markedly different from the first edition in 1896. Beginning in the Paris suburb of Compiègne, the riders will travel a total of 261 kilometres, including 49 kilometres of pave divided amongst 26 sections. The first cobbles at Troisville come at 98 kilometres, but it's at Haspre and Havrelie, sections 10 and 11, when the race will really begin to take shape, as the riders position themselves for the run-up to the now most infamous sections. After 165 kilometres, the riders will enter the Arenberg forest. Here in 2001, Georgi Hincapie punctured while leading the race, and Wilfred Peters sprung out of the pack for a long breakaway. That set the tone for Domo's domination. No doubt it's always an event for both rider and spectator. Still 90 kilometres and 14 grueling sections of pave to go, including Warlang, Orchy and Cizoin. Just 16 kilometres from the finish, the final section will enter Le Carrefour de l'Arbre, and over 2,100 metres of mud, rock, and the winner may pull away. 2 more sections of pave remain before entering the Roubaix Stadium. Then it's 1.5 laps and a place in history. No innovations, just a simple journey back in time to the days of epic marathons over potentially inhuman conditions.
Thank you, Paul. And now we have these live pictures here, and this is going to be a great centenary for Paris-Roubaix. It's a duo battle. 31 riders getting clear after 31 kilometres. 14 of them are surviving at the front, and we are approximately 100 kilometres or 62 miles from the finish. And in this breakaway is Tom Boonen of the US Postal Service, but there is no other favourite up here yet. Enrico Cassani, Max van Heeswijk, Lazio Bedrogi of Mappe, Nico Matan of Cofidis, Thierry Gouvenou, and Sebastian Tellerbaden of Big Mat, Thomas Eriksson CSC, and also up here is Hans de Klerk of Lotto, Raphael Schroeder of Team Coast, Tristan Hoffmann of CSC, and Yannick Tombach. Now that's the breakaway, plus Klyer of the Telecom team. But we've seen up here Robbie Hunter, 2 punctures has taken him out of the breakaway. News from the peloton, who are over 4 minutes back at the moment, with Postal doing all of the racing to try and reduce this gap. And as you can see here on sector 16 of the cobblestones, the riders are very slippery. The weather has totally changed since the start. The rain has come down. The temperature is cool at 43 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind coming in from the northwest at 9 miles an hour. And the rain that we hope will go away, but it's turning the cobblestones into a very, very slippery scene indeed. We're looking here now at Raphael Schroeder, who's driving this break, with Max van Heeswijk, who's done an awful lot of work. He, remember, is on the same team as Johan Museeuw, who's been out with a puncture. He got back into the group, and also Zabel's had the puncture. Freddie Rodriguez has had 2 flat tyres, but they are all back in the chase group, and the last time check to the main field was 4 minutes and 7 seconds. So that's the situation at the moment. We'll take a break. So joining at the back of this leading group to make it 14 leaders once more there is now Talabarden.
These guys here, Phil, certainly have a huge advantage right now because, in fact, we are heading up to Wallers Arenberg, and they will be the first riders to go in there. And in the main field, it will be absolute chaos when they charge into the Forest of Arenberg, because all of the main leaders and all of the big favourites before the start of the day are in that group behind, which is currently around about 4 minutes in arrears.
Now, this is the Sector 16 here at Haveluy. And this is the main field who are now crossing in pursuit of those 14 breakaways. We did have a couple of telecom riders in that breakaway, but gone now is the sprinter Danilo Hondo. He was dropped, and they're leaving only Andreas Clear up there. There's the latest gap coming to us now. 4 minutes and 7 seconds. As far as we know, Paul, none of the favourites have missed this big split in the peloton. Museo's here, Fred Rodriguez, Eric Zabel are all still there, and of course George Hincapie.
All of the big names are in the main peloton right now, but nearly all of those big names you mentioned, Phil, have had mechanical incidents out on the course. As you said, Freddie Rodriguez, 2 flat tyres for him. There's another problem at the back here. Looked like one of the Faso Bortolo riders having a problem. Rodriguez with 2 flat tyres, Museo already with 1 flat tyre. Just a few moments ago, we saw Eric Zabel just getting back onto the tail end of the main field. This, for the 100th anniversary of Paris Roubaix, is certainly going to be a very dramatic one.
Well, it's going to be quite a slippery old passage through the Forest of Arenberg very shortly. We're now seeing US Postal. Paul is very concerned that the Postal team are working a little bit too hard here to keep Hincapie in touch, and they're doing Museo a favour, we feel.
I think they are doing Museo a big favour right now. They've done an awful lot of the work to try and make sure that the advantage doesn't exceed the 5 or 6 minutes mark as we rejoin the rear end of the field. You can see just how slippery these cobblestones are today. It's because the rain has come down after about 10 days of unbelievably warm weather in the north of France. Not very normal for this time of the year, but the temperatures have dropped down. It's only just above freezing for the moment, and this first coat of rain in 10 days is making the cobbles very dangerous.
It's true, you know, psychologically, I think this will hit many of the riders in this race, simply because they weren't expecting this after 10 days of glorious sun, especially for Ghent-Wevelgem and the Tour de Flanders and their training round here. And it seemed it was going to be set fair all of the way to Roubaix. And then just as the riders rolled out of Roubaix, back came the telephone message to say it was raining at the finishing line, which we could hardly believe. Well, as we drove to the finishing line, the weather changed dramatically. The cloud came in, rain began to fall quite heavily, and that's the way it's staying at the moment. The only good news for the riders just now is the rain has stopped in the velodrome at Roubaix, which is where we're commentating to you from. And it looks to me as though this breakaway is going to split up here. We're looking at David Klinger. He's coming off the back of the peloton just now. He's done a lot of work at the front. He's now just trying to hang on to get off these cobblestones, and with a bit of luck he might hook up on the back again.
Well, very often what happens in the cobblestone sections, Phil, is they go absolutely ballistic. They blow out as many riders as possible, then they try and recover a little bit on the smooth surface. We're now back with the leading group of riders, and for them, they are getting themselves now psychologically prepared for what will come in around about 4 or 5 kilometers time, the big Forest of Arenberg. On the front here, this is Bodrogi, the Mapei rider. Just behind him, you can see the rider from Team Coach Schweber. But these guys right now, they're trying to get themselves ready for what is going to be the big explosion in this group, because the Forest of Arenberg, having been dry for so long, is going to be unbelievable when these guys come in there.
Well, Mapei looked to be very strong earlier on, and it was Robbie Hunter who was driving this breakaway. Then 2 punctures in fairly quick succession has taken him out of this leading group. Also his teammate Pedro Jarillo. So at the situation at the moment, as we are now on leaving sector 16, that was the sector of Pave de Haveluy, heading now towards the Forest of Arenberg. So the riders inside 100 kilometers from the end, and a quick resume of the men we have in the breakaway. Enrico Cassani and Max van Heeswijk of Domo. Laszlo Bodroga, the only survivor of the Mapei team, is still there. Nico Matan of Cofidis, Tilly Gouvenou, Sebastian Talabarden, and Alexis Sivakov, all of Big Mat. Thomas Eriksson of CSC, clear of the telecom. Yannick Tombak is still here. Hoffman of CSC, Schweder of Team Coast, the Lotte rider is Hans de Klerk, and Tom Boonen of US Postal. They are the survivors of 31 riders that broke away after 31 kilometers. We are now inside 100 to go, and for anybody that knows the route around Roubaix, and Paul Sherwen certainly does, when you see the mines here, Paul, you know the forest isn't far away.
Well, that sign there indicating Paris Roubaix, all of the bike riders around here know that the race is about to come in to the Forest of Arenberg. The Forest of Arenberg over the last few years has been a place where the race not has been won, but almost certainly for a lot of riders their chances have disappeared from winning Paris Roubaix. They will be entering here in a few moments' time, and all will be very nervous.
You got Faber, who has more connections on Wall Street.
The bankers, the lawyers, the CEOs.
David brings to the program intelligence.
Can you explain why you would change directions?
And here's a guy who, when he's not on camera, is on the phone trying to get inside information so that our viewers are on an even footing with the Wall Street pros.
He's got a real passion for business.
It's the best show on television, best business show on television.
David Faber on Squawk Box. Weekdays at 7 a.m. Eastern on CNBC. Not business as usual.
Friends is pretty good sometimes. ER, West Wing.
Of this first of the big tours. It all starts May the 11th, and then it's 3 weeks of racing until one man walks away with the pink jersey in Milan. Live and exclusive is the Giro d'Italia on OLN. Well, we're now into the Forest of Arenberg. They've just entered here, and it's Max van Heesik driving on at the front at the moment. The Belgian flags are waving. There's a huge crowd here, and it looks as though down in the centre of the course with 94 kilometres to go, Paul, the rain has eased off.
That is actually
Enrico
Cassani,
yes,
who's got into the Forest of Arenberg, but you can just see there's a little bit of slime come in from the amount of rain. It's actually not raining out on the course. Unfortunately, here at the Velodrome, it isn't raining right now either, but it has made the course very slippery indeed. When the main field comes in here, there's going to be absolute chaos, as there always is at the Forest of Arenberg. Cassani flicking across the road there, trying to get himself onto the smoother part at the side there. For him, fortunately, the organisation have put these steel barriers down, which has allowed the riders to come into the Forest of Arenberg in a fairly normal situation. In previous years, this race has been absolutely invaded here by the crowd. I think it's taken a certain amount of the atmosphere away for the spectators, but for the riders at least, and as a former rider, I have to go on that side, it has made it a much safer section of cobbles.
Well, that is absolutely true. You may notice the police outriders here all riding motocross bikes and not their normal road bikes rather, and for good reason too. Cassani, he's got great form just now. He had a wonderful Tour de Flanders as well, and he's pushing on here for Domo. And at the back of this breakaway now is the Big Map boys, who are getting themselves just in a little bit of bother as we speak. That's Big Thierry Gouvenou, I think, at the front now. No, it's Hans de Klerk at the front now for Lotto, just behind Cassani. Schweder is the rider in the yellow. This is a very interesting group.
In third place there is Tom Boonen. What a great revelation he's been to us over this last 3 weeks. He used to be a young man who was looked after by Dirk de Mol, the team manager of the US Postal Service and a former winner of Paris-Roubaix. And look at him ride on these cobblestones here, Phil. You can see just how comfortable and confident that young man is. They were telling me this morning that after this race is finished, they're actually going to rest him for a month and try and bring him back onto form later on in the season. And it's good when you get a brilliant talent like that not to burn a rider out, especially when you don't forget that this young man is just 21 years of age.
Absolutely. He won 11 races in his last year as an amateur, and he was the under-23 champion of Belgium. I said to the team manager, Johan Bruley, this morning, you found a great one in Tom Boonen, Johan. He says, oh, we knew that 3 years ago.
Pretty confident. It's easy to say that once the man has got one or two very good performances under his belt, and I think he has been a great ally for George Hincapie over this last week of racing. Still in the Forest of Arenberg, this is a hugely long section of cobblestones, and it's still Enrico Cassani on the front there, just to the right-hand side behind the race organizer's car, setting a fairly good tempo, but Boonen using all of his experience riding down the middle of the cobblestones. The little piece of road at the side there can be very dangerous indeed, because every now and again, very occasionally, you can get a long line of cobblestones which can force the front wheel to just disappear. But this leading group now of 14 riders splitting into 4 men who are moving off the front, it doesn't appear as if anyone has had any bad luck or any flat tires or mechanicals.
At the moment, 2.4 kilometers long of this cobble stretch. A little rise coming now as they come towards the end of it. And it's Cassani taking out over the top there de Klerk. Boonen and Ralph Schroeder. They are the 4 riders, just a slight advantage for them. Trying to close down the gap, though, as the race now tries to reduce the lead of those 4. So often, although we're still a long way from the finish, this is where the foundations are built for the riders who take out the major prizes. These are the big map boys, placed in a little bit of trouble. That's Yannick Tombak in the blue jersey as champion of his country. And he is going to be joined at the back too, I think, by other riders now. You can see them being shaken as they try to pick what is a comparatively smooth ride over these cobbles. The Italian flag there, Paul. Well, they've been the champions of the Classic so far this season, but there's very few of them near the sharp end of the race today yet.
Well, this has been a very long section of cobblestones, and very shortly at the far end of this section of cobblestones, Phil, we will have the main field charging in, and the main field is in the Forest of Arenberg right now. Somebody slipped right across the road, and once you lose your momentum here, Phil, it is devastation. There is Maximilian Chianri right in the middle of the group there. We can glance a little bit further back to see who else is present in this leading group. There's the champion of Belgium, Ludovic Capella. The champion of Holland has just gone down there, Jans Koorts as well. But it's absolute chaos here in the Forest of Arenberg, and we are not surprised.
We are not surprised at all. They are really struggling. This is a Rubens Bertogliati who's battling at the back. He was in the breakaway earlier of the original 31.
Fastest man from the main group into this cobblestone section now is Stefan Weissermann there on the right-hand side. Georgi Hincapie is there as well in second place, so he's got a good entrance into the Forest of Arenberg. Just trying to ride across behind. There's one of the Domo riders. I don't think it is Johan Museo, because Museo is a little bit further down the line right now. But Hincapie, as he was last year, very close to the front coming into the Forest of Arenberg. And the main field there stretching out behind. There's another mechanical incident for one of these guys in the main group.
This is decision time, the first big decision for the peloton. This is why US Postal rode so hard to bring George to the Forest in a great position to try and bridge gaps. Servais Canavan in the centre of the picture there. Fred Rodriguez off to the right, battling Fred. He's had 2 flat tyres today, and he's ridden hard already to get himself in what is an excellent position. This is an amazing bike race, and you'll never see anything else like it in the world of sport, and it looks as though the big guns are firing at the front of that peloton.
They all knew what they were waiting for. This is a very strategic piece of cobblestones. There's Freddie Rodriguez now leading the front end of that small split there. Carnarvon is in this group as well, but I think Georgi Hincapie is going to be very happy with his performance coming into the Forest of Arenberg. There's the Italian champion as well in the tricolor there, Daniele Nardello. He is also riding fairly close to the front right now, but Weissermann is the man setting the tempo. There's Taffy coming through, so all the big names for the moment, Phil, are in the main peloton.
Yes, but they'd like to see the gap come down a little bit. It's still 4 minutes, the last time check we've got. George Hincapie there, second wheel as they come through the Forest. A lot of hard work having to be done. That looks very much like it is Johan Museo, who's got himself right on the wheel of George Hincapie. Remember, bad memories for Museo in this direction of the Forest. This is where he badly damaged his knee that almost ended his career. But they are memories, thank heavens now, and this man is still belies his mid-30s age bracket as they leave the Forest of Arenberg. There's some big hitters now, got themselves a lead over the main field. So while Johan Museo progresses towards Roubaix, at the start this morning he was chatting with Frankie Andreu.
It's a hard race when it's wet, it's a hard race when it's dry. It's always very hard, and it's always the strongest riders who win. When it's wet, when it's dry, when it's windy, when it's cold, and it's always the same rider, the best rider who's win. So the tactical in the race is not so important.
I'm sure you're going to have a good result today. Could this be your last Roubaix, or you have plans for the future?
It can be every day my last race.
But you're planning on going on next year for the Spring Classics?
Normally my last race gonna be in Zoller, but you never know. The Museo is always full of surprises.
I've learned that many times. Hey, good luck. Thanks.
Well, the race now swinging off the cobblestones of the Forest of Arenberg. Now we return down towards Wallers, then we swing right and we continue on these cobblestones which come thick and fast as we approach the finish, of course. But the Paris Roubaix race very much on, but it still has an awful long way to go, this race. And George Hincapie now has started to fire well. So they're around about 50 miles now, almost exactly to the finish, as they are continuing now onto the sector of the Pave on zone 13. And this is the debut. We've done the debut through Honang and we're on to Wandigny, and it'll take us through to 80 kilometers on the finish as we make our way, and we're running exactly on schedule at the moment. If anything, we are slightly ahead of schedule because of the very fast start, and that is a good sign that the race is very much under pressure. It's taking a long time, I think, for the leaders, the men we expect to be at the front of the race very shortly, to try and put matters to rights, purely because they allowed 31 men to escape in the first 30 kilometers of racing, and that was when the sun was shining.
It was when the sun was shining. It's all changed right now. It's very cold here in the north of France, just tickling above freezing level at the moment. The rain is sort of inconsistent right now, but it's just enough, Phil, to make the cobblestones very dangerous and slippery. You can see just a small coating of moisture over the surface of those old cobblestones there. As we can see on the front, the Domo Farm Frites there rider is Max van Heesewijk. About 5 or 6 places back there is his teammate Enrico Cassani, and just sitting on the back there for US Postal Service is Tom Boonen. Boonen has done an absolutely magic ride, and I don't think he could have had a better week in the one-day classics for the start of his professional career.
Well, 2:16 now, and that's the Hincapie group, and they're coming in as fast as they can, but not too quick to try and pick up the leaders. We've no further news at the moment on the peloton. Remember, we are actually situated in the velodrome at the finish, where I have to tell you now, the rain has just started again here. So I thought it was going to clear up, but it hasn't been the case, as the riders now are making the way towards sector 12, which will take us into the last 75 kilometers. This is the composition of the chase group now. Harillo and Hunter were in the lead group, as well as Serpellini. They're now back in a very select chase group here, containing George Hincapie, Denis Zanetta. He was originally in the breakaway. He's gone back as well. And Stefan, and there's a little bit of a wheel slip there. And that looks to me as though it was Andrea Taffy on the front who lost his back wheel. But what a bike ride. I think he held it up.
That was pretty tricky doing that, but you know, these guys, when they're in good form, they are absolute acrobats on the bike. You're alert every time you come into the cobblestone sections and you're waiting for something like that. But this is turning out to be pretty dramatic. A very good move by Hincapie. He followed the acceleration of Stefan Weseman through the forest of Arenberg, and we're now looking at a nucleus of the big names of this bike race. One man missing at the moment, Peter van Petegem from the Lotto squad, but this would be fantastic to see Hincapie ride across the gap right now. It's a fairly large group because they've picked up 1 or 2 riders who are in the early morning breakaway, but Hincapie is riding like a man possessed. He actually wants to put a stranglehold on this bike race, but he needs to be very careful of the performance of Johan Museo, because Museo is an older rider and he really has got a great tactical sense, and he'll use Hincapie to the very last moment.
Right, let's take a short break now from Modern Heroes of the Pave as we continue our celebration of the 100th running of Paris Roubaix, and check in with the man they call Monsieur Paris Roubaix, Roger de Vlaming. Paul Sherwen had a chance to sit down and talk with the man who ushered into the modern era of Paris Roubaix. He won it an amazing 4 times.
Well, Roger, everybody regarded you as the specialist at Paris Roubaix. You won it 4 times, but you could have probably won it a 5th time, but you actually let your teammate Francesco Moser get up the road, and you finished 2nd on that occasion. So I would love to have won it 5 times. Maybe I could have done. I won it 4 times and finished 2nd 4 times. When Francesco Moser was my teammate, yes, I let him go because he attacked first, and I stayed back and finished in 2nd place. If I'd attacked first, maybe I'd have been the guy to win. How is it possible that you rode Paris Roubaix almost 11 times before you had your first flat tire? Is it some kind of special preparation, or were you just lucky?
Oui, c'est un peu normal quand vous êtes en plein forme.
When you ride a race like that and you have good luck, you also have to have the good form, and you keep out of danger and out of difficulty. I rode a lot of races well. I won Milan-San Remo 3 times. If you're in good form, then the luck just accompanies you.
Dans les autres courses, c'est aussi gagner 3 fois Milan-San Remo et 3 fois deuxième, ça veut dire peut-être le même.
Which of all the Paris-Roubaix did you prefer, when the weather was good or when it was bad?
Pour moi, c'est la même chose quand
It never made any difference to me whether it was dry, wet, muddy. It was all the same. It was the same race. I won the race when it was dry, and I won it also when the conditions were bad and wet. And of all the Paris-Roubaix that you actually took part in, which one gave you the best memories?
La fois que j'ai battu
When I beat Merckx when he was the world champion.
Bon anniversaire à Paris-Roubaix. Ça fait 100 éditions et c'est vraiment une très très belle course.
Well, Bernard Hinault once rode this race, won it, and then told the organisers he'd never take part in it again. But happy 100th to everybody, and that's the way we all feel. We're still on the Sector 12 second section now as we head towards the finish, some 70 kilometres still to ride. They're trying to regroup at the front, but the pace is still being set by Hans de Klerk and Nico Martin. Tom Boonen, the US postal sensation, is in that group.
This is the second group right now. This looks like Johan Museeuw on the front. He really wants to put the hammer down. He wants to get Paris-Roubaix on in earnest. He wants to get himself into a position where he can possibly win this bike race again. But now taking over the pace-making on this very long section of cobblestones at Waallang. It's 2.4 kilometres long. That's 1.8 miles. Hincapie has come to the front and he is setting an unbelievable tempo. He doesn't have very many teammates left now. They've all been left behind. They did a lot of work for George Hincapie. They literally blew the race apart, and Hincapie now is putting a man like Johan Museeuw into difficulty.
Well, becoming something of a balancing act here on the cobblestones. Museeuw, the master of the cobbles, looks the least troubled. George is riding very solidly as well. There we are, just inside 70 kilometres now to the finish. And these riders know they're riding behind the two race favourites here, George Hincapie and Johan Museeuw. So why not let them do all of the work? That seems to be the attitude here on Sector 12 of the Pave. George is doing a lot of work, but I think George is happier when he is doing a lot of work in Paris-Roubaix. He's shown us that over the years with his 6th place and his 2 4th places. He likes to dictate, and this is one of those unusual races, Paul, where I think you have to be proving to yourself all of the time you're strong, and of course being first man, you're getting first shot at the cobbles as well.
Strange thing about riding the cobblestone sections, we just ride off section number 12 to go here, is that it hurts everybody just exactly the same way, and Georgie Hincapie is dictating his pace to the other riders in the group. And yes, it does give you an awful lot of confidence to know that you're putting other people into difficulty. But it is also, I think, what has happened so far in the race is George Hincapie has made a very good operation. He's isolated Johan Museeuw, so it's going to be at the end of the day Museeuw against Hincapie, but don't count out Stefan Weissermann. The big thing that US Postal have done was they used their team to perfection, making sure that that leading group of 31 didn't get too far off the front, but they did have a man in the group, the man that they expected to ride well, the man who in the Belgian papers this week said, I am going to be the sergeant for George Hincapie this weekend in Paris-Roubaix. Well, I think he's had a bit of promotion there because he's probably moved up to Lieutenant Colonel.
I think, you know, we're going to see a lot from that boy over the years, and he's learning it with a great team too, because they're having a wonderful start to the year, US Postal. 5th place by Floyd Landis in the Circuit of the Sarthe in France, just 48 hours before this race began. The gap now, as you saw, 2 minutes and 3 seconds, so it's being held just now by this counter-attack by Hans de Klerk and Nico Martin. De Klerk is a good man on rough roads, because last year he won one of the Belgian semi-classics, Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne, and that also has cobble stretches of roads in it. There's Robbie Hunter sat at the back. He knows all about the bad luck today. 2 flat tyres took him out the front and put him in this group here.
Freddie Rodriguez has got into this group as well. I'm not sure where Freddie Rodriguez came from, but he has managed to integrate the group, and I'm trying to look a little bit further forward to see if this is still the group containing Hincapie and Johan Museeuw. It must be, because right on the front there, there's a US Postal jersey. So Johan Museeuw has got a very serious teammate who's come up alongside him right now. The man who at the start of this day was 3rd overall in the World Cup, the American champion Freddie Rodriguez. And he too, Phil, has had a brilliant start to the season, the best he's ever had.
No doubt about that. 2nd in Milan-San Remo. That gave him all of the confidence he required to have a very good Tour de Flanders, finishing in the chase group. And look at this trouble for Hans de Klerk now as he's on this sector of cobblestones. Martin is pushing on a little bit, and he's well gonna, and oh, I thought that was another cyclist coming in the shop, but it was off camera. There's the shot. Just look at this now, Paul. This has gone from what was just dust covered just 24 hours ago to a little bit of a quagmire now.
Absolutely brilliant. these are the Paris-Roubaix that certain riders absolutely dream about. I remember Steve Bauer always wanted the weather like this. Little bit of picture breakup, but that's because of the microwave link up there. De Klerk lost his momentum there, Phil, and once you lose your momentum, it is so difficult to get going again.
Well, he's being urged on by the crowd, who are wisely staying the other side of that barrier. He is no longer a happy man. I'm wondering if, in fact, he's got a softening tyre here, and he's in all sorts of bother now. And it's a good job we don't have sound out on the course, I think, just now. But Hans de Klerk, I thought perhaps he had a softening tyre. He seems to be okay again now. He's found his place. Usually the cobbles are best to ride dead centre. That's when the highest above the ground and usually the least damaged by the traffic. And he got himself caught on the right-hand side of the rut there. Well, our picture's not behaving too well at the moment, the atmospherics, as we look down on the two leaders. And in fact, de Klerk is going to ride back up onto the wheel of Nico Matin. It would be foolish of Nico to even try to stay away just now. He'll need a lot of help if he's going to hold them all off to Roubaix.
It's a complete test of mind, body, and character. Dominated for the last 3 years by the undefeatable spirit of Lance Armstrong, he continues to rise to the battle and meet all challengers head-on. The first American to win the Tour with an American team on an American bike. Now, going for his 4th straight victory. Coming this July, exclusive live coverage of the Tour de France, only on OLN.
Well, as you left us, we saw the big pile-up. Let's have another look at it here now. Rodriguez being balked and dropping it there. Hunter going down, landing on his back. Stefan Weissermann also falling down. An absolute big stack up, this one. Thankfully, nobody hurt at all. So that's good news. That was all on Sector 12B. We are now back with the leaders, Paul, and these are the two leaders, probably unaware about that big crash behind.
Well, they're now on a very long, smooth section of road where they'll try and recuperate a little bit before they go in again to a whole host of cobblestone sections. The two leaders that we're looking at, Nico Matin in the white and blue jersey of Cofidis there with Hans de Klerk from Lotto, are around about 20 seconds ahead of a group of 6 riders as we rejoin now Johan Museeu's group. He's looking over his shoulder to see what sort of damage. He's shouting to the other riders to work as hard as possible right now. Mikkelsen is in the group, Hincapie is in the group, and if we can have another quick look, we will probably see that Servaes Knaven, and there he is, wearing number 1 as last year's winner, is in this break. This is absolutely remarkable, as Hincapie is in with the same men he was in the leading group with last year.
Yes, well, earlier I was saying that things were going the way of George Hincapie, but look at that lineup now. Museo getting the man who won last year, Servaes Knaven, in with him. Knaven is a big surprise to us all. It was reported over the weekend he was out after his bizarre accident when he hit a child in an underpass while out training. Seemed to be too injured. Out came the sun and out came Knaven, and here he is now in a chase group with Museo, Hincapie and Lars Mikkelsen, who told me against Wevelgem he has tremendous form this year and he's never been outside the top 20.
Tactically, things are starting to look rather bad for George Hincapie because there are 2 more Domo riders up the road. Let's not forget they were in that early morning breakaway, Max van Heesewijk and Enrico Cassani. So when all of these groups come back together, there are going to be 4 riders from Domo Farm Frites. There will be 2 riders from US Postal Service, George Hincapie and Tom Boonen. So now it looks as if the team of the classics, Domo Farm Frites, have had the tactical advantage tip across to their side once again.
And the rider just picked up there is coming back from the breakaway. I think it was possibly Talabardon who has just been caught from the front group and has come back into the back. No, it's number 93. So that's a CSC rider who slipped away outside of our view. So he's come into this group now, and I don't quite know where he popped up from, but it's like that in Paris-Roubaix. This is Tristan Hoffmann, original member of the breakaway. And just look at these boys now cutting a steady trail through. Picking up all of the riders who've had their share of falls as well today. This is Hans de Klerk now back here. So he really didn't enjoy his last couple of stretches of cobblestones, Paul.
He certainly didn't, but you know, this race is now starting to come back together because this group now that we're looking at here with Hincapie, Museo and Knaven are not very much more than 1.5 minutes behind the leading 2 on the road, Nico Matin and Hans de Klerk.
Well, they'll be thankful for a little bit of smooth road for the moment now as we cross over towards Sector 11, which will take us to the track of the prayers, the Chemin des Prières. This is Max van Heesewijk, second. Tom Boonen wants a little bit of a drink, and I can't blame him. This is the reforming of the breakaway at the front. Hans de Klerk is back. I must assume too that Nico Matan is back, and they're reforming the breakaway. It's been a good break though, and it's now down to just 7 riders.
7 riders who remain from a leading group of 31 men who escaped after 31 kilometers of this bike race. And it really is going to be a treacherous run in towards the finish, because once again, Phil, the rain has come down here in the Velodrome in Roubaix. It's a kind of race today when you certainly need to win on your own if you want to win this bike race, because sprinting round this track here is going to be very dangerous for anybody, because there's no way at all you can go up the slopes coming down towards this finishing straight. It's not the longest of the classics. Paris Tours is generally faster. The Tour of Lombardy is far more beautiful in its setting. Liège-Bastogne-Liège is more physically challenging. And yet it's Paris Roubaix which remains the classic above all the others. Started in 1896 as a warm-up for Bordeaux-Paris, the race has always been held on or around Easter Sunday. It's always featured the rough roads through the coal mining area of northern France. For many years it was Doullens Hill which would split up the peloton. Soon after, the race would enter the l'Enfer du Nord, the Hell of the North, where the successions of cobbles would punish the limbs of the riders. The famous finish on the track in Roubaix further complicates the equation. In the 1960s, road improvements were causing replacement of the cobbled tracks. So in 1966, the start was moved to allow a more meandering route to the finish, which maximised the use of the remaining cobblestones. 2 years later, the route was truly revised to include 57 kilometres of pave, including the infamous Arenberg Forest. The winner that year was none other than the world champion, Eddy Merckx. But still the roads were being paved, so the start was moved again in 1977 to its current home in Compiègne. 6 additional sections of pave were incorporated, and the rider who excelled in the modern course was Roger de Vlaming, winning the race 4 times in 6 years. As recently as 1999, the route through the Arenberg Forest was reversed in an effort to avoid the 60-kilometre sprint onto the cobbles, the cause of Johan Museeu's terrible crash the year before. Regardless of a new threat emerging each year, the brutal pave sections remain the soul of this great race. Today marks the 100th edition in its glorious history. The Queen of the Classics rides on.
Well, it doesn't look too different today either, because the riders are just as muddy as we look down now at sector number 11 here to await the arrival of the leaders, which have now swelled to 8. And a huge crowd here as we skirt the edge of Orchy and into this very narrow section, the track leading to the Prayers. And here are the leaders now. It looks as though it looks to me as though it's possibly Van Heeswijk who's got himself onto the front. Tom Boonen, not a wise position to sit there at the back now, because if the riders do slip and slide, Boonen will be taken out with them. The rider in the yellow strip there is Team Coast Ralph Schroeder. Had a great day out today as Ralph. And there's the flag of the USA, and George Hincapie is on his way.
Hincapie's not too far behind right now. The last time check we had was just 40 seconds, and this is a very long section of cobblestones, the Chemin des Prières. Max Van Heeswijk is at the front there. There is Hans de Klerk. Next man coming through is the man from Cofidis, Matin, and sitting right on the back there is Boonen. But this is a very slippery, tricky section of cobblestones. You can see every now and again, if you just glimpse across to the side of the pictures, there are team cars who come out, and these are fairly unofficial team cars who are out there to try and look after their riders should they have a flat tire at a critical part of the course, because if you were to have a flat tire right now, you may well have to wait for a couple of minutes before your team car can get in to look after you.
Absolutely, and so they just pop in. It's not against the rules, by the way, so they send extra help out on sectors where they expect trouble. Well, the man that came across, and we didn't see him come across, is Laszlo Bedrogi for Mapei, so it makes 8 riders in the lead now as the pressure goes on, and 7 riders are chasing. Canavan, Museeu, Rodriguez, Chandri, and Hincapie rather is there as well.
This is the second group on the road there now being led by Maximilian Schienri. A quick time check bouncer back to Andrea Taffy. He's 1 minute and 45 seconds behind at the moment, as we now join the group with Schienri, Hincapie, Museu and Carnarvon, the big names that we expected to see here. They've been given an official time check of 53 seconds, but I figure myself, Phil, it's actually inside of that time right now. There you can see the group. Hincapie there comfortably in 3rd place. And once again, the spectators here in the north of France coming out to celebrate this 100th anniversary of Paris Roubaix, which really is very dear to the hearts of the people from the north, les nordistes.
Absolutely. These are the spectators who really know their cycling sport, and these riders are heroes to them, and well, they are to everybody that appreciates how hard it is out there today. 8 of them are leading at the minute, 7 of them are chasing. It looks to me as though Vedrogi, who's just got back on, is having a little bit of trouble hanging on in the Chemin des Prières. This is 58 kilometers from the finish now, and there's our traditional view from the horses as we watch the riders come over the prairies.
Tom Boonen sitting at the back here, allowing everybody else in this group to set the pacemaking at the front. Matin is in front position there, followed by Cassani. So just off the front will be de Klerk and Max van Heeswijk. Max van Heeswijk, by the way, Phil, was in the leading group last year. He'd obviously been given the order again this morning to make sure that there were a lot of Domo Farm Freaks riders in that leading group that nearly always goes habitually in the first hour of racing at Paris-Roubaix.
Well, Max has chased and hooked up to Hans de Klerk as they come off sector number 11. Just a short sector of smooth road now, and we're 57 kilometers from the finish. Van Heeswijk is a real danger today. If he doesn't have any bad luck, he'll be my man to win the race. Let's hope it goes good for him.
Questo tessuto semplice, il più santo premio nel ciclismo italiano. È la maglia rosa del capo del Giro d'Italia. I grandi solo indossarla. Il primo era Learco Guerra a 31. Gimonde battuto Merckx per vincere la sua, anzi n'ha passato una bufala di neve per tenere la sua. Questa tappa Giro d'Italia, 200 metri, vedi
OLN's coverage of the best early season one-day races continues in April. On Thursday, the 25th, it's 2 great hours of gear-grinding action as we bring you the Tour de Flandre at 8 p.m. and then La Flèche Wallonne at 9. 2 top races at one night, only on OLN, the place to be for world-class cycling.
Welcome back to Paris-Roubaix. This race has had many nicknames over the years. Teeth Rattler, Bone Crusher, Tendinitis Maker, and the most famous one of them all, the Hell of the North. But what makes this race special is that it's different. During the year, the riders race about 100 races over the same type of roads. Smooth roads, good pavement, a couple bumps. But this race is the most gnarly, most punishing race around. The Pave will tear your body apart. Now, you'd think the boss of this race would be a rider, but actually it's Patrick Lefebvre, the current director sportif of Domo. His riders have won 5 times in the last 6 years, and they've swept the podium spots 4 times in the last 6 years. Now, if you're a betting man, like many people here in France and Belgium do, I'd put my money on Domo to finish up on the podium. Now, let's get back to the action, and let's see who's at front.
Well, thanks, Frankie. What a great manager Patrick Lefebvre has been, too, sweeping that podium 4 times with the top 3. The first time he did it, we thought we'd never live to see it happen again. Well, this is becoming a super pursuit now. We've got 7 leaders and 7 chasers, and they still, Paul, have not quite come together.
I'm quite surprised, and the only reason it hasn't come all together really is because of the work being done on the front of that group there by Nico Matin. It looks now as if this second group is starting to split up a bit. That's Johan Museu on the front, trying to put time between himself and George Hincapie. Hincapie's lost 4 or 5 bicycle lengths. Then it's Stefan Weissermann. The next man along there is Maximilian Schienri. Going off the back of the group there was Lars Mikkelsen. And right now, Museu is the man who's trying to put the hammer down, but Hincapie's right on his wheel.
The man missing is Freddy Rodriguez. No sign of him just now, but Hincapie has gone himself right up there to Johan Museo. It says a lot about the American. He is fighting and one day is going to climb on that podium, and let's hope it's the day. He's again in the thick of the action here. Museo putting in a big attack. This is very typical Museo now. It hasn't worked, so he wants everybody else to come and do the work. Stefan Vesseman has come up, so we've got three very good men in the chase now. And I'm not so sure whether Lars Mikkelsen will get back. He looked to be going back quite quickly.
He looked as if he may well have popped just there a few moments ago. But after the Tour of Flanders, George Hincapie and Lance Armstrong actually sat down together, Phil, and looked at the videotape of the film as Chianri comes back here. Armstrong went through it with George Hincapie and explained to him how he felt he may well have made a few tactical mistakes. And I think since then, he actually said to me this morning, the great thing is Lance spoke to me about just how great a bike rider he was and how he takes control of a race. And I think today we're going to see George Hincapie try and take control of this race in the last 25 or 30 Ks.
Well, Lance Armstrong back home in Texas today because he is taking part in his Cancer Foundation Ride for the Roses. And let's hope he's catching time to watch this too. George Hincapie, the rider who has 3 times made the top 6 in Paris-Roubaix, and you don't get an easy ride in this event, and George has always been an animator of this event this past few years. These are the leaders still being driven on by Nico Matan as we now leave behind us the Auchy and Berzé stretch of cobblestones. The group is now just 34 seconds clear as we cross the town of Berzé itself. The next sector of cobblestones about 2.5 kilometers away.
Chevy Trailblazer. Everything else just seems kind of weak. The 270 horsepower Chevy Trailblazer, like a rock.
How well do you know your world?
OLN presents the interactive global adventure experience, Adventure Crusoe. Follow the clues, guess the mystery location.
Do you think you know where we are? Should we tell him? I think we should.
It could be next door or around the world. Log on to OLNTV.com. Enter to win vacation getaways and other cool prizes.
I gotta run. Off to the next Adventure Crusoe location. We'll see you there.
Adventure Crusoe, Wednesday, April 24th, 8 p.m. on OLN Adventure TV.
I'm Roger de Vlaming. Congratulations for 100 year Paris-Roubaix.
There's a nice close-up there as we look here. The big danger yet again in a race from Paris to Roubaix, and he said Bordeaux, because you know when this first began back in 1896, this was actually a training race for the great Bordeaux-Paris race, rather, behind little Derny motorbikes. Then of course it became very much a race in its own right, and sadly Bordeaux-Paris is no longer with us. Looking at the action here now, right on the nose of this year's 100th Paris-Roubaix. And the riders are slowing down a little bit now because now they're getting, they've got to think this one through as they're heading up towards the next sector of Pave. And this will be Pave number 8 at Mérigny. You wouldn't think the cobblestones exist in that beautiful setting, would you? But they're just around the corner. And at the moment, too, the rain has gone away again, and the sky, if anything, is looking a little bit brighter. So the riders may get a bit of a break as they come into this final 25 miles of this year's Paris-Roubaix. All started with a breakaway of 31. Now all of them have been caught by the top riders of the expected top riders, rather, at Paris-Roubaix. Stefan Vesseman, he was 7th last year, had endless problems with his shoe cleats, didn't sort them out in the end, and he was out of the hunt for the final sprint. The 19-second gap there is to the 3 chasers, Servais Knaven, Fred Rodriguez, the USA champion, and Hans de Klerk, who's had a bike change. And I don't think that Canavan's had any problems today, but Rodriguez has certainly fallen, had punctures, and de Klerk has had a bike change. And in this front group now, George Hincapie versus Johan Museo, the two top names of the Spring Classics, and they have been now for a couple of years. 2 wins to Museo, but no wins to George Hincapie, and if anybody deserves victory in this race, it is George, and his father is here watching him race, and I should imagine Carl Berter watched some of the pictures today coming through here in Roubaix. Thierry Gouvenou is the rider setting the pace at the front just now, and the gap behind about 15 seconds now to the 3 chasers. So they are coming back. Can they get on?
It's going to be very difficult, I think, because very shortly we'll have another long section of cobblestones. A great ride by Thierry Gouvenou, who's actually seen himself at the front of Paris Roubaix in the past, Phil, by getting into the early morning breakaway, which many of the teams try to get as many riders as possible into. Hincapie right now must be trying to work out the odds against him, but he looks absolutely superb whenever he does come up to the front end of this bike race.
He does. He just loves this race, and if anything, the turning of the weather has favoured George because he likes it when it's like it is today. As we see Lars Mikkelsen, who struggled a bit on the cobblestones, now lifting the pace and going to the front. Nico Matans had a superb race. He's holding second wheel as we race now onto Pave sector number 8, which leaves us 41 kilometres to go to the finish. Not too long, this one, at 700 metres, but a chance to see if we've got any weak riders sitting there at the back.
15 seconds is the gap back to the 3 riders, Canavan, Rodriguez and Hans de Klerk, so they're just about holding it right now. But this little bit of acceleration on the front from Lars Mikkelsen, there's in fact 1 or 2 riders slipped off the road there. It looked as if it was Stefan Weissermann, just had to take a little bit of deviationary action there to keep himself upright. But it really is a slippy section of cobblestone. In fact, de Klerk has crashed. Rodriguez has missed it there. Fortunately for him, that was de Klerk who just went down there. It looked as if Freddie Rodriguez survived. He was just getting himself onto the back end of the group there when this incident happened, and Servais Canavan too managed to keep himself upright.
Well, that's bad luck for the Belgian, and also for Freddie Rodriguez, because they're applying the pressure now. Meanwhile, here we go again. Move back to the front, and whenever the road becomes cobbled, Johan Museo gives it every ounce of strength he has left. Mikkelsen and Hincapie are trying to get on terms.
Johan Museo once again has come out here at Paris-Roubaix. He's put the hammer down. He was waiting for a moment to try and split the group, but he's caught everybody by surprise here right now. That was a very slippy section of cobblestones. He's obviously got his tyre pressures to absolute perfection. Lars Mikkelsen right now is a few hundred meters behind with Georgi Hincapie. Hincapie right now must hammer home and try and bridge the gap to this man, because otherwise he's going to fly.
You know, he's absolutely superb, but the fact is that there's nobody can ride the cobblestones like Johan Museo can, and this man just goes. He's 36 years of age now, and he doesn't talk of growing old. He talks of moving into his second youth, and this man seems to be proving just that at the moment. Winner of Paris-Roubaix in 1990. Here we go again. This is how he did it. 1996 and 2000. Paris-Roubaix winner on the attack now. He waited till Lars Mikkelsen made the move, and then he went over the top of him.
Unbelievable, complete and utter acceleration here. We're now looking at 40 kilometers to go to the finish. That's going to take around about an hour to an hour and 10 minutes in these weather conditions and road conditions. But Johan Museo has gone out on the attack. He's got around about 15 seconds over these 2 riders, Hincapie and Lars Mikkelsen. But what an unbelievable acceleration, Phil, there by Johan Museo. He waited for Lars Mikkelsen to go to the front, not going fast enough, thank you very much for me, and he came tumbling up the inside and just opened up the throttle.
Yes, I'm not sure whether Mikkelsen will be strong enough for George. So the situation now, that attack has come at 40 kilometers from the finish. It came when we were riding on sector 8 at the halfway through the debut of the Pave de Marigny, and leaving us 219 kilometers covered, 41 to go. Museo has left the group behind. It's a long way to ride to the end, and Johan will know that as well as anybody. A massive crowd here now as we move into the area of Pont-à-Marc, and it looks to me as though he's going to try and hold them off to the finish. So it's all down to the others now to bridge the gap, and I'm just wondering if they can. right now, Hincapie is in a podium position, and no Americans ever got in the top 3.
And they've got a teammate in there as well. There is the time gap. It's 24 seconds from the lone leader, Johan Museeuw, back to the 2 chasers from the U.S. Postal Service. But they are now going through the town of Templeuve, and very shortly, Phil, they will be coming up to the next section of cobblestones, which is a long section of cobblestones. And there, if Georgi Hincapie has got those legs, he has to do what Lance Armstrong told him to do last week after looking at the Tour of Flanders tapes. Take the race by the horns, give it to the opposition. Don't let them dictate the pressure of the bike race to you. You are the man who has to lead, and you are the man who has to dominate. We're now coming up to the next section of cobblestones. This is number 6. It will be the section of the Pave de Moulin de Vertin, and it is a long and disgusting section. There is the Moulin, the windmill, which is turning round to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Paris Roubaix. Museeuw is the first man onto those cobblestones, and 20 seconds behind him he should see the U.S. postal train of George Hincapie and Tom Boonen.
Now, this is a rather muddy stretch. It's only half a kilometre, but it is usually battered by the weather. As you can see, there's not much protecting it, and the surface itself is not the best. Here we go, over Le Moulin de Vertin, and in the lead is Johan Museeuw, the master of the cobbles, the Lion of Flanders, the king of the mountains. He's fantastic when he gets onto these stones. He just goes quicker, and I think this is where he'll knock a couple of seconds into these 2 U.S. Postal boys. But they are superb. A massive crowd is out for this 100th. When we left Compiègne this morning, I think it was the biggest crowd I've seen, that beautiful city, to see the Paris-Roubaix off on its 100th edition. And we're seeing the newcomers try to tame the old line, and I'm not so sure they can.
Well, they're having a hard time. The gap is staying in exactly the same all of the time. You see, with a man like Johan Museeuw, you have to be on his wheel when he attacks, because when you give him 100 meters advantage, it is very difficult to nail that back. This is the 3rd group on the road. They're around about 20 seconds themselves behind the group there of George Hincapie and Tom Boonen. That is Thierry Gouvenou in the group as well. You can see the Lampre rider, Maximilien Chianri. Nico Martin is there a little bit further forward as well. But this section of cobblestones has really blown the race apart. We've got now, off the end of this section of cobblestone, 6 kilometers before we go to the very long section, the section of Sisouin. And I think if Johan Museeuw is still away by then, it's going to be very difficult for the US Postal guys to pull him back into the field, because he will feel more confident as he gets closer to the finish and closer to the cobblestones that he knows, the sections at Sisouin, Quinfin-en-Pavel, and of course the most difficult one remaining, the Carrefour de l'Arbre.
Well, there's still some 8 kilometers of the cobbled roads lying ahead of Johan Museeuw. He's now out of sector number 6, and he's well into his time trialing rhythm here. The ex-world champion, the man who has been the king of this queen of the classics on 2 previous occasions. He's been placed as well. And George now is free of the other riders. And remember, no American has ever finished on the podium at Paris-Roubaix. George Hincapie has finished 4th in '99 and in 2001. He's also had a 6th, but now he wants a top 3 at least, and he's in the finest position to get it.
Museeuw now goes past the sign indicating 30 kilometers to go, 18 miles away from winning this race for the 3rd time.
Well, I know that all of Belgium will be willing him on. I'm not sure that most of France will also be doing the same thing, but he is a man now who is doing what we haven't seen for a while. That's blaze a lonely trail in Paris-Roubaix. Johan Museeuw being pursued by a Belgian and an American.
Mountain biking's best on OLN is brought to you by the flame-broiled Whopper from Burger King, America's favorite burger. At BK, you got it.
A one-time road racer, Allison Dunlap switched gears and took on a career in mountain biking. The transition paid off. With sheer drive and plenty of talent, this 2-time Olympian has shown the world that she is one powerful force on a bike. Last year, in the wake of September 11th, Allison rode for the U.S. in the World Championships, and she showed everyone what American pride truly is. She stood atop the podium, champion of the world.
It's just an incredible dream. It's just great to do it for America, and I'm so excited.
Allison has also made the move into cyclocross. Last year, he parted with our longtime sponsor GT and joined Luna Chicks. With an ever-evolving career, Allison Dunlap has taken every turn with the optimism of a true champion. And that's what makes her one of mountain biking's best.
I'm Sean Kelly. I would like to wish the Paris Roubaix the 100th edition all the best.
We are on Sector 4 now, Campin-en-Pével, and this is the sector which is a vicious sector of cobblestones, and if Museo can get through this without any problems, then I think he can really start dreaming of a third victory. He's showing no signs of slowing down, and he rides these cobblestones with the skill of an acrobat.
Unbelievable. You see his bike is hardly moving at all there. The cameramen are having a hard time keeping their cross motorbikes up in a straight line. But Museo has got the power today. This is a very dangerous corner at the top end. And this is the corner where a few years ago my best man Alain Bondu dropped his bike when he was in the leading group with Sean Kelly. Kelly went on to win on that occasion. But look at the time gap. I think it's pretty much all over for George Hincapie now, because this man at the front, Johan Museo, has a 1.5 minute advantage over the two-man chasing group, and at 1:45 now is the group containing his teammates Max van Heeswijk and the other man who was in there as well, Enrico Cassani.
18 kilometers to go, and he's just hoping and praying now he has no mechanical problems, no flat tires. It makes me wonder just how these wheels and tires stand up to conditions like this. There's George Hincapie and Tom Boonen still locked together. If Boonen survives this and takes a place at the finish, Paul, and then a breakaway like that going at 31 kilometers, so a break of some 230 kilometers, to me would measure with the time that Thomas Wegmuller was beaten by Dirk de Mol after a race-long break.
Who just happens to be this young man's team manager.
Exactly.
And the man who's looked after him when he raced for the Kortrijk amateur cycling team. Dirk de Mol has looked after this young man, and he's always expected him to come to the top of the sport of professional cycling. But what he needs to do is to look after him carefully over the next couple of years and not burn him out too much and not put him in too many big races, because after all, he still is only 21 years of age. This man, on the other hand, is 36 years of age. He had told us this was going to be his last Paris-Roubaix. He had told us this was going to be his last year as a professional. But who knows? I heard that story once before. That was back in 1996. And there you can see Hincapie having to get round that car there. In fact, there seems to have been a slight accident, and I would think that's the car of Bernard Hinault. And this is George Hincapie stopping at the side of the road, pushed on by the spectators. But Phil, once you lose your momentum, it's very difficult to get it going again.
Well, George is struggling here. That's unlucky. Obviously, there's been a bit of a problem with the vehicles on that bad corner. And down, in fact, goes Tom Boonen, and right into the ditch here. Well, this is such bad luck for the US Postal Riders. Hincapie's now got to go alone here, but you've got to feel sorry for Boonen.
Very unfortunate for that young man, because now he will take a little bit of a psychological blow as we look here at Georgie Hincapie. Hincapie trying, you see there, looking there at the side, a very nasty crash, and going right down into the ditch at the side of the road there. Very unfortunate right now for this duo, who were doing a great job of staying in second and third position on the road.
Well, that's got to be a 2-minute lead now for Johan Museu. And George Hincapie has got to get off this cobblestones, recompose himself, and get on with the rhythm. And let's hope that Tom Boonen can get out of that ditch and get back on his bike as well.
You have to try and make a decision now, Hincapie, as to whether to go on alone in second position on the road or wait for his teammate. There's no decisions like that for Johan Museo, though, because he just has to keep riding and try to build up as big of an advantage as possible. He doesn't have very far to go, Phil, because before he turns on to the very difficult, for me, the hardest last section of this year's Paris-Roubaix, the Carrefour de l'Arbre, and very shortly he will turn into it. There it is, 3 sections of cobblestones to go. The Pave Bleu is what they called at the beginning. They're blue granite, and in situations like this, they are absolutely atrocious. Almost impossible to stay upright, but for Johan Museo, it looks as if the race conditions are almost dry.
Well, they're all favouring the brave Belgian now as he races under the flag of Flanders, and the line of Flanders is now into this terribly long stretch of 2.1 kilometres, and other than they are that dry, Paul, he had a bit of a problem to keep up there as he went round that right-hand bend. The crowd know that this is the point of no return here, where you can lose Paris-Roubaix as much as you can win it, and they've all come out here in their thousands to watch a Belgian race towards his home.
can't believe the way he's going around those corners, Phil. They are unbelievably slippery, those cobblestones. They are some of the worst cobblestones that Paris-Roubaix has to offer. But just to come back on that point you picked up on before, the front end of Johan Museeu's bike is bouncing off the road quite a lot. You can see when he rides the cobblestones, he's actually holding the bars right in the middle. That actually allows a little bit of movement in the front wheel and allows the front wheel to take the best line, the smoothest line over the cobbles. Another difficult corner here for Johan Museeu, but it's amazing. I don't think any of us could have imagined yesterday when we looked up at the sky to see how blue and clear it was that this was again going to be a historic Paris-Roubaix. It's the 100th anniversary, and I think the gods of Paris-Roubaix came down just to scatter a little bit of a wet excitement over this race.
Well, it's made a classic of a classic today, and this has been such a fitting salute to a race which really hasn't moved out of the ages back in 1896 when it was first run. There is Tom Boonen now. He's been joined by Stefan Westermann, who must have been a bit surprised to see him. In fact, that's George Hincapie. So Hincapie and Westermann has come up. Now, this might be a little bit of a help here, but we've got the two riders together. So then it looks as though Hincapie and Westermann are together. And now looking here, back with the leader, we've got Johan Museeu still on this long stretch of cobbles, 2.1 kilometres.
So he's got a long climb up now to the Pave de l'Arbre, a little bit of tarmac in the middle, and then again a further section of around about 500 or 600 metres. Another difficult corner here for Johan Museeu. He's now on the long slide up towards the Pave de l'Arbre, the cafe that only opens once a year, and that's for this incredible bike race, the Paris-Roubaix, the 100th anniversary this year. But for Johan Museeu, it seems as if he's wiping away the disaster of last week when he wanted to win the Tour of Flanders. And it may well be that earlier on we had that crash incident, and it could well be, Phil, that in fact it was George Hincapie that went down. It was a helicopter shot, but it wasn't absolutely certain. But I think it may well have been 101 who went into the ditch.
It was indeed George Hincapie. Didn't look like him, but it was Hincapie who went into that ditch, and Boonen, who has continued on in second place at the moment. Westermann has now come up alongside George Hincapie. And there's the situation. Boonen continues to race in a magnificent second place, but 2 minutes 7 seconds now behind Johan Museeu. And we can work it all out, because you can imagine the chaos out there. We have very little contact with the course. The race radio, because of all the cobblestones, is not working that well. As past the flag of the Breton people of France comes Johan Museeu, and on the other side the line of Flanders, those yellow flags, and this is the line of Flanders, blazing his own personal trail towards Roubaix, where he's now going to win this race for a third time.
Right now as he realizes, and there's Hincapie getting caught by Lars Mikkelsen, Tristan Hoffmann and the two Domo riders. There is Enrico Cassani wearing number 2, Max van Heeswijk wearing number 8. So basically for Georgie Hincapie, his big dream out of the window completely. But at least for US Postal Service, they should almost certainly have a man on the podium, and that will be a man who had expected to work his heart out today for George Hincapie. Tom Boonen, the 21-year-old Belgian, is riding the first Paris-Roubaix of his life to absolute perfection.
Well, George is going to have to pick himself up there, because it is very unfortunate. He gave this race everything today, and bad luck has stopped him in the pursuit. Otherwise, I think he'd still be up there with Tom Boonen, and probably Stef Westermann wouldn't be. But that's the way this race is. This man did it right. He went out front, he attacked, he took the whole race on. It was a big gamble to go 40 kilometres out and some of the worst stretches of cobblestones left. But he did that, and while they've all faltered, he has just gone from strength to strength. Just look at his style here on what is a very ugly right-hand corner there on this sector of cobblestones out at M. But now Johan Museeu is beginning to smell victory for a third time.
I can't believe the risks that he's taking, Phil. He's flying around these corners. He doesn't need to take those kind of risks and take the kind of risks to extend his advantage anymore, because he's almost 3 minutes ahead of the second rider on the road. But he just wants to build up as big an advantage as possible, because he wants to ride onto the stadium and enjoy his 1.5 laps here. And in fact, for the first time, really, the sun really seems to be smiling on Paris-Roubaix. This is the corner just there where he went through, where Henny Kuiper almost lost his Paris-Roubaix. He came came round that corner so fast he popped the tyre off the rim, and it was absolute chaos for a few moments when he thought he was going to get caught by the root, but he survived. Johan Museeuw now is off that final difficult cobblestone section at Hem. He now is facing around about 6 kilometers to go to the finishing line. A small climb up through Hem to the top of the road, and then he plummets down into the finish for what will be his 3rd win.
Pave, sector 2 now for the group here, riding for 2nd place. Tom Boonen behind Stefan Vesserman. The sensation and behind Johan Museeuw, without a shadow of doubt, of this year's Paris Roubaix. Boonen breaking away after 31 kilometers, and he's still riding for a podium place. This is Thierry Gouvenou here now, who was chasing with Hincapie, now back in a chase group of 6.
Brilliant ride by Gouvenou to be there. Big Matt actually had a superb start to their Paris-Roubaix today. They had 4 riders in that early morning breakaway of 31 men, and Gouvenou has right now managed to survive. There's a problem here for Thierry Gouvenou at the back. It's a rear wheel puncture, but the car is right up behind him to change, and very unfortunate. In fact, they've decided to opt, Phil, for a very quick bike change as we rejoin the Tête de la Course, the front of the bike race. Johan Museeuw is riding his long time trial here, 40 kilometers to go when he launched his attack. And ever since he opened up the first 20 seconds, he's continued to increase that lead all of the time.
Showtime Hollywood Hits presents.
We need to take down one of these cartels.
The winner of 4 Academy Awards.
My husband is a legitimate businessman.
Including Best Director.
Let's do some more.
Best Supporting Actor.
I feel like a traitor.
Michael Douglas, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Don Cheadle, and Benicio del Toro.
It's all about the money.
Traffic. Part of Showtime Unlimited. Added for $12 or less per month. Call 1-800-DIRECTV to order now.
In 1935, Foxwood Farm started with 1 horse and a truck. The horse was a thoroughbred, the truck a Chevy Suburban. Today, they have a few more horses, but there's still only 1 truck, Chevy Suburban. With an available 8.1-liter Vortec engine, it's capable of towing up to 6 tons, making it the best Suburban yet. Chevy Suburban, like a rock.
We're looking now at the race for 2nd place here. Stefan Vesserman, his bad luck gone from last year. As we switch now to the rear of the 3rd group, Thierry Gounou's had his problem. Cassani has also had his problem. The gap is officially 4 minutes back to this group now. There's George Hincapie, Lars Mikkelsen and Tristan Hoffmann. Hoffmann also recovering, and that's in fact Max van Heeswijk going through. He was a faller earlier on. Every one of these riders has had some sort of delaying problem in these last 40 or 50 kilometers of this race.
Every bike rider in Paris-Roubaix today, Phil, will have a story to tell tonight in the showers and for the rest of the week when they go back and share it with their family and friends, because this has been a historic Paris-Roubaix. It's the 100th edition of this incredible bike race, and the man who always seems to rise to the very special occasions, Johan Museeuw. This man almost died because of Paris-Roubaix a few years ago when he crashed in the forest of Arenberg and split his kneecap into about 5 pieces. He caught an infection and had to be evacuated to hospital. Then after that, he forced himself back to the top of the sport, and it seemed as if everything was almost over when he was involved in a motorcycle accident. Again, kept in hospital and intensive care, and he fought back from that. He is one of the most incredible comeback riders in the sport of professional cycling, but he is also a very tough bike rider. He's a tough man, and he revels in these conditions which have come down and bathed Paris-Roubaix today.
And it's gone out now to 3 magnificent minutes for this rider, who's recovered from all of the injuries Paul has mentioned, to come back to win Paris-Roubaix, a professional since 1988, and he's now bringing home the 100th edition. It's so fitting that a rider of this stature has taken out this classic at the 100th time of asking. He's never faltered, he's never looked weak, he's ridden the cobbles with the confidence of a man 10 years his younger, and let's hope that Boonen and Vesserman can hang on now to fight out for 2nd and 3rd. The last time check then, 3 minutes and 1 second, 3 kilometers to go to the finish. Nobody, but nobody now can catch Johan Museeuw.
He's got to be feeling very confident now. It's a big risk attacking so far from the finish, and he attacked 40 kilometers, 25 miles from the finishing line. A little look over his shoulder there, and the only thing that he will see will be the team car of Domo Farmfried, which is being driven by his friend and former very good teammate Wilfred Peters. Peters must be pretty nervous in the car. He must have been over the last 40 kilometers or 1 hour of racing to see and ride up alongside Johan Museeuw. That is the finishing place where he will come in around about 3-4 minutes time. The sun has come out and it's absolutely superb. The race came to town in sunshine, and that really is something we didn't expect a couple of hours ago.
It is absolutely on cue, the sun, the crowd. You can't get a bigger crowd into the stadium today. Anywhere is possible for them to stand. They are standing there. They're watching the same pictures as you are on a huge screen in the center, and they just cheer every time we go back to Johan Museeuw. 2 3/4 kilometers remaining of 261 today. Just look at these crowds now as we race down towards the Entrée du Vélodrome, the entry into the cycle stadium. There's just one little tiny sector of cobbles will come in the last kilometer before they go onto the track, and they're just laid there really to remind you you're about to complete Paris Roubaix.
What a brilliant performance by this man, and there's no question at all about who the crowd want to win this bike race, whether they're from the north of France or whether they've moved across from Belgium to witness the finish of the 100th anniversary of Paris-Roubaix. They all want this man to win because he is a true Lion of Flanders. He ridden today, Phil, like an absolute Trojan. He's dominated this race, and once he got that advantage, I don't think anybody was ever going to pull him back into the fold. And very soon now he will come into the stadium for the final time, and I think he will absolutely enjoy his 1.5 laps here of glory.
So we're heading down now on this final little stretch of cobblestones. Then we will bounce to the right of them and race into the stadium. There's the kilometer kite, seen before by Johan Museeuw, but seen this time with a daylight of more than 3 minutes to the second rider on the road. Museeuw is about to enter the stadium, which has welcomed this race for the majority of its 100 years to the biggest cheers, I think, Paul, we will ever have heard.
It's going to go absolutely balmy in here in a few moments' time when Johan Museeuw turns in, because the north of France is almost Belgium, and there are so many Flemish flags out here for Museeuw, and here he is right now.
There it is, onto the track, and he's gone wide too. Now steady on, Johan, because it's a bit slippery right there. Very soft from the rain. He's corrected that. This man of great skills is coming on to win his 3rd Paris-Roubaix. He's got time if he wants to equal the 4 of Roger de Vlaming. I don't think he'll do that, but that's not what's in his mind right now. He looks across the stadium as he gets a bell for the last lap. He will also complete this last lap because the other riders won't be on the track at the same time.
They certainly will not. Johan Museeuw has certainly not begun his celebrations right now. He will have finished Paris-Roubaix before the 2nd and 3rd place riders come in. Look at that, Phil. 6 hours, 37 minutes in the saddle. And for Johan Museeuw, he has wiped away the disappointment of not winning the Tour of Flanders last week. But Paris-Roubaix for a 3rd time, well, thank you very much. That'll do nicely.
Yes, 2nd last year too in this race, but 2nd to his teammate Knevel when it didn't work out for Museeuw. He left nothing to chance this time around. Wait for it now as he rides up the home straight. This is going to be the greatest moment, I think, of his life now, as Johan Museeuw has won Paris-Roubaix 3 times. The man who turned professional in 1988. He is the champion of the cobbles again. The Lion of Flanders roars once more. So Museeuw now has time out to watch the sprint for 2nd place. And let's hope it's going to be between Tom Boonen and Stefan Wesserman, because Boonen has been the other man of this race today.
Well, Tom Boonen has done a great ride out on the course, but the man who is celebrating in the center there, he has been absolutely mobbed, Phil, just about 20-30 meters away from us here by an incredible group of media from the Belgian press. They're going absolutely out of their minds because they wanted this man to win last week, but he's come up with the goods and he's celebrated absolutely superbly here, making this his third win at Paris Roubaix.
And there he is, 10 fingers showing as he crosses the line. We look down now on the stadium. We can see in the distance the helicopter, and he's picked out the two riders who are being chased. They are still together here. Tom Boonen, the new boy, against Stefan Westermann, who was 7th last year and had atrocious luck, now racing for a 2nd place, and without doubt his finest ever race as well. But he's going to have to take on an inspired Tom Boonen, the man that broke away after 31 kilometers, and now 230 kilometers later he is going to claim 2nd or 3rd and mount the podium as well. And this a professional for a matter of months, and he's going to attack him, and I think he might be a good bike rider on the track.
He very well could be 21 years of age, but it's going to be difficult. It's a hard sprint when you've been at the front of this bike race for so long. 6.5 hours in the saddle for these bike riders, and this is an unbelievable finish to a first Paris-Roubaix for Tom Boonen. The US Postal Service will have a man on the podium, but right now it's a question of, is it going to be 2nd place or is it going to be 3rd?
Well, Boonen's been manoeuvred into the lead here. Westermann will be content with that. It takes, for a road cyclist, a little bit of nerve to ride the Bank Stadium here in Roubaix if you're not used to it. Now we'll see if Stefan Westermann can do something special here. I think he can. He's not going to rush past Tom Boonen. He's going to leave him out there and wait. He's wisely looking over his shoulder across the track to see if anybody else is chasing in. There's no danger of that. And now Tom Boonen is going to have to lead out Stef Westermann. It would have all been so different if we hadn't have had that problem on the Pave that saw George Hincapie crash spectacularly into the ditch, and Boonen was forced to ride on alone and leave his team captain behind. Now he's racing for a place he could never have dreamed of, a top 3 finish as Westermann goes. Surely Boonen can't react to that. This man, though, is a huge star of the future as he chases Westermann. He's not going to close. The legs just cracked. Stefan Westermann comes into the home straight. The German gets 2nd, and the mighty Tom Boonen takes 3rd for US Postal.
Well, a brilliant ride there, but this young man, he had so much fatigue, but Stefan Westermann a little upset there with finishing in 2nd position. It's only a dream of what could have been the situation, and Hincapie now, Phil, is onto the stadium as well, and he'll be looking to try and equal his 4th place of last year, but he's in a group of around about 8 riders, and I would think Hincapie is going to have to do something pretty special to try and get this one, because just in front of him there in 2nd place is Lars Mikkelsen, who is a very good sprinter.
Well, let's hope George can get 4th here. It'll be the 3rd time he's finished 4th if he does, but he has raced so well today. He's promised more all day. Now he's got to take on Raphael Schroeder, leading out Lars Mikkelsen. Mikkelsen now goes. George is hooked up nicely onto the wheel. They'll come round for the bell this time. Tristan Hoffmann is in 3rd place as they come off the banking. 1 or 2 riders here are fancying their chances, and Mikkelsen is deciding he's going to have to go the whole way around the stadium. That is a long way to sprint, and George is going to have to take the others on as they come up towards the line here now. It is Tristan Hoffmann, Lars Mikkelsen, Hincapie, I think, on the line, but I'm not too sure. That'll go to the photo. But George, Paul, possibly a 6th place finish. Well, there you have the result of this year's Paris-Roubaix, a win for Johan Museeuw ahead of Stefan Westermann, and US Postal's new star, Tom Boonen, finishing in 3rd place. 4th, Tristan Hoffmann. 5th, Lars Mikkelsen. Then George Hincapie finishing in 6th. Well, Frankie Andreou's managed to get in amongst it down there, and he's now got George Hincapie with him.
When Johan attacked, it looked like it was one of those, you have to risk everything to be able to go for that win, and you and Tom were riding fabulous.
Yeah, Tom was super good today. He was a lot stronger than I was. I just didn't have it today.
Here's the overall standings in the World Cup. Johan Museeuw with 170 points, ahead of Mario Cipollini with 120. Andrea Tafi with his win last week in 3rd place with 109 points. Hincapie well up there, Phil, in 4th place, and Freddie Rodriguez still keeping himself in the top 10 with a 5th place at the moment.
And this has been a really rough ride for Fred Rodriguez today, and we can find out what he thinks now as he chats with Frankie.
Freddie, your first Paris-Roubaix, and it seemed like you had more than your fair share of bad luck.
Yeah, it's amazing. I had such great legs today.
How many times did you crash, you puncture? It seemed like everything that could have gone wrong almost did, the first section and later on.
Yeah, I had 4 crashes. I had to change the wheel twice. What can you do? You know?
But the legs are good, the form is still there, though.
Yeah.
All right, good luck later on.
Thanks.
What a season the Americans are having, both Rodriguez and Hincapie, but we've also seen other members of US Postal also ride well. Floyd Landis, 5th in the Circuit of the South. Tom Boonen there, their new superstar, but he is a Belgian, let's not forget that. And here he is now talking with Frankie.
The charge was in my wheel and the other guys getting dropped one by one. And then I come home, we get the turn and I pulled out and it was just me and George. Yeah. And then we started giving it all, but there was no way coming back. Johan was so strong today. We tried, we came back 35 seconds, 40 seconds, but there was no way. And then George took a nasty fall, like at the 25 k's to go, and I got in front alone. And I wasn't sure what to do, like wait for George, but he was tired too, so I just took it alone, and Dirk told me go for the podium. And then Weisman came back, but at that moment it was
I mean, you were out there all day. No, super job, and I hope it just gets better, man, next time. Way to go.
So, well, the road's been laid now, and it's time to finalise who'll be riding the roads of the Tour de France. OLN brings you the team show for the 2002 Tour. Last year we had controversy, and we'll see if 2002 has more of the same. Join Paul Sherwen, Frankie Andreo, Bob Roll, and me, Phil Liggett, for the 2002 Tour de France team selection show, and the date, May the 9th at 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. So be sure to visit us online, where all details of our coverage and plans for cycling. Remember, our website address is olntv.com, and it is there where you'll find all about our plans for the sport of cycling and all you need to know about the major events. And what a season we have planned for you. Paul Sherwen and I and Bob Roll, Frankie Andreo, going to look forward to bringing you the best, not just the Tour of Italy, not just the Tour de France, but let's not also forget at the end of the summer the Tour of Spain as well. Well, Paul, final thought on what has been, for me, one of the best Paris-Roubaix I've seen.
Absolutely brilliant. I think the final thought is the fact that Johan Museeuw did what you need to do when you're a true champion. You need to take control of the bike race. You ride off the front and dominate. As Lance Armstrong said, and Bernard Hinault said to me as well, you have to take the race to the opposition. Don't let them dictate, and that's exactly what Johan Museeuw did today. He stamped his own personal authority on the 100th Paris-Roubaix.
Well, there you have it then, as we see now the face of the winner, Johan Museeuw, the new leader of the World Cup. From all of the team here in France, who have done a superb job in very difficult conditions today to bring you what is surely the greatest bicycle race on earth. Until the next time, goodbye.